Hello and welcome to the 41 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball Podcast. I am your host, Michael Patrick Rooney, telling you to get ready for a new season of fishing fun with Academy Sports and Outdoors. Real and the best gear at low prices every day. Plus, Academy offers easy ways to shop and save time, like free 1-hour in-store or curbside pickup on academy.com orders. Let me introduce you to the other members of the band for our Week 7 preview. Who knew? Week 7. We've got Zebby Barrels, Aaron J. Fitt, Aaron Zebediah Fitt, man with multiple middle names. We've got Joseph J. Healy, a.k.a. Sauce. And then people, please come and kiss the ring. We have the leader of the weekly picks game right now, Patrick Ebert, hashtag Ebert. Patrick, just dominating the weekly picks. We thought we sent some umpires to your house to check your hands, just like we do in now, see if there's anything in the glove. We could do that on the podcast. It's far in substance in the hat. Ebert, good to see you. And care to give us an introductory comment on just dominating the weekly picks game?
Yeah, Burke asked me this the other day too, and I just trailed on for about 5 minutes and completely dodged the question. So I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just I'm feeling it right now. I'm in the zone. If you want to play a little pickup basketball, I like my chances slightly better than I did about a month ago. So yeah, that's really all I can tell you. So happy to be on top.
Nothing like that. No, you didn't make an adjustment to your swing. Nothing.
Yeah, just a lot of off-season training. I'll just say that. So I read probably 2 extra fall reports than I normally do. So maybe that's what put me over the top. I'm not sure.
He's in the best shape of his life. Many people are saying.
Many are saying yes.
Up here.
Yeah.
Fitzy, I heard that there's suspicious footage of Patrick visiting Chris Gennaro's cabin in Maine, southern Maine, in the off season. Some shenanigans. Potentially. Care to comment, or is that an ongoing investigation you can't comment?
No, listen, right now we're going to keep those details to ourselves, but I'll let you know when we've reached the conclusion here. Listen, Patrick Ebert Farms, many people are calling him. He's a problem. He's a problem right now.
It is a problem
for the Fitt dogs, for the Roon dogs, for the JoJo Joes. Like all of us, we need to look ourselves in the mirror and figure out what the heck we're going to do about this guy, because he's a problem.
He is a problem. Joe, is it true that you're just sitting there kind of lurking within striking distance? Is Patrick drafting for the JoJo Joes? Is that what's going on right now?
If we could still see each other's picks every week like you used to be able to, that might actually be my strategy now at this point. Would just be if Patrick ends up running out of gas down the back stretch, then I would too, but we're going to move together as a unit. But look, we're just we're biding our time. We're a veteran in this game now. We're not getting sped up like we used to, being decisive on my picks. I think that's been important. And I'm just hoping to catch the team, as I call it in my head, 2 thumbs up, because get it like Ebert, Siskel and Ebert.
Yes.
Team 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up.
I call myself the Eberts. So that's just takes me back to my Sesame Street days or something. I'm not sure.
Strong, very strong. So, Ebert, you are also you and our good friend Burke Granger do a very fun podcast, part of our D1 Baseball Network, Big Ten Baseball and Beyond. And so we're gonna capitalize on your expertise here. So let's, as we do our Week 7 preview, let's start with the Big Ten. And so I'm going to highlight a couple series, and then I'm going to ask you a question, Patrick. And this question is for the group, obviously, and you guys can talk about any series you want. So to me, the big series in the Big Ten are Penn State at Michigan. Penn State having a great year. Michigan just seems very talented to me. So Penn State at Michigan, UCLA at Purdue. And then USC, Southern Cal at Indiana. Those feel like the big 3 series. Patrick, here's my question. The question is this. Who are the teams that could potentially prevent UCLA and Oregon from winning the Big Ten this year? Because to me, I perceive UCLA and Oregon to be the 2 most talented teams in the league. But that doesn't mean they're going to win the league. If I were to offer a guess, I would guess Iowa. Iowa really has my attention. I think they're about to beat Minnesota tonight. as we're speaking here. But Patrick, what say you? And then Fitzy and Joe, I'm curious your take. Who can challenge Oregon and UCLA, who started out 7-2 in the league?
Yeah, it's a great question. To be honest, I'm not sure if anyone can, because right now those two teams look so good. And I'm actually going to get a look at UCLA this weekend at Purdue. And I know Burke is pretty excited to see Oregon at Ohio State in his backyard too. So really get a good look at both those teams and just see how they stack up. I saw Iowa the second weekend of the season, and their starting pitching is definitely legit, and their hitting has been good all year. I just think it's just a team, they haven't played that one series yet that we really get that good litmus test to get an understanding as if their success is sustainable. You mentioned Minnesota, kind of in the same boat. Minnesota doesn't have the greatest record. I believe they're still below 500, but their RPI is so good because they beat so many good clubs. I still look at Penn State and Indiana as the teams that have the best chance to give Oregon and UCLA a run. I just like the way they're constructed. I like the coaching that they have involved there. Burke's laid eyes on both those teams. He actually saw the series between those two teams in State College. And then, that Nebraska is the team that just completely confounds me, because I've been calling them Texas A&M of the North. And, it's kind of funny how they have so many connections between those two programs, but I'm not trying to pull out this big Game of Thrones reference here, but I mean, Nebraska is just, I don't understand why they're struggling, even after losing their ace, Mason McConaughey. One of the reasons I liked them so much coming out of the fall was their pitching depth. And right now the pitching's been solid, but the hitting has been not so great. So at some point they need to wake up, or right now they're kind of at risk of possibly missing the Big Ten tournament.
I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm just going to say, you could say Mason McConaughey is like the Ned Stark of Nebraska.
Yeah.
And we'll see, how they if there's a redemption arc for this club. But I'm just going to say this. I think you're right. I think, first of all, Indiana is a team. I kind of like the way that team is starting to come together after a slow start. That team has my attention. Certainly Penn State, we all liked heading into the year, and has been generally pretty good over the first 6 weeks. Michigan, though, is the other team that I would put in this conversation. I think it's still a fascinating race between, obviously, Oregon and UCLA at the top. And then, you mentioned Iowa is also 7-2 right there in the mix, or 8-2, I guess, if they won tonight. I mean, they're off to a good start, but Michigan is a team that I still am intrigued by, and I don't know, do they have quite enough pitching? They have some good arms. I think they need Dylan Vigneault to really give them a little bit more stability from week to week, because he's just so talented. If this guy can really take that step and be a dude, then I think that changes the complexion for him. But they're sitting here at 5-4. They won a big series last weekend at Purdue, right, Patrick? That was on the road. I think that they're positioned now to just kind of line in the weeds. So that's another one. I think with all those teams, those 6 teams, separated by 2 games, really, it's a long way from over. So I think this race is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Joe, as you comment, I just want to let you know, I feel like Ebert and Fitzy here are ambushing you in the first inning. Ebert's throwing Game of Thrones references at you, and then Fitzy just turned the phrase redemption arc. So again, I don't want to put extra pressure on you, Joe, but we are really bringing the heat right now.
Yeah, I think I'm going to pitch off on this first answer and just try to make up ground later. Just going to let this one go by. And yeah, and then we'll make it up on the back end. I think Patrick and Aaron both made a lot of great points, highlighted the right teams. Obviously, if you want to dig a little bit below the surface, we've talked about Michigan State, and it's you're going to start off with a win most Fridays, but it's what else do you get the rest of the way? But if they get 75, if they can win 75% of those coin flip games on games 2 and 3, they're kind of cooking. I don't know if they're a threat to win the league, but I think they've proven there's enough staying power there outside of Jerwa that can be an interesting team. But the team in general for me is Indiana. And I think the indicator I look at is, as a team that I did the fall report on, so I feel like I had a pretty good feel for who they were. I know you can't look at everything at a stat sheet and just make a judgment on that, but the guys they expected to be their guys have mostly been pretty good. And on the mound, Cole Gilly has been good in the rotation. And if you want to nitpick it, it's okay, they need to get some more help on the mound. It feels like they are. Patrick, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like they've kind of just like thrown a lot of numbers at the mound, trying to figure out what to do around Cole Gilly. But if they get that figured out, I think they're really dangerous. But largely, I think the guys they expected to lead the way have been leading the way. And to me, that's a positive indicator of, maybe they've dropped some games you wouldn't have expected them to, but I think it's a team that has some staying power here.
The last 2 weeks, Indiana's pitching has been a lot better. And, your point about Cole Gilly is a good one, but like Ben Grable's kind of established as their Saturday guy. Now they had Ryan Kraft and Cole Gilly kind of split that Friday responsibility last week with a lot of success. So it feels like they're starting to figure out some roles and some just some characteristics of their team that are coming into place, that if they figure out that pitching side of things, we all know they're going to hit and score runs.
I'm with you, Ebert. I saw Indiana with Coach Farron in surprise, and the only thing I didn't like about their position player group is the age of them. They're very committed to getting the high school athletes that they want and developing those kids. Every coach talks about development, but not every program is really doing it. They're really doing it. Like they're getting the freshmen they want, and you're playing day one. And so, again, I saw them opening week. They're coming out of the gym, the whole deal. But Ebert, I've said this many times on this podcast, and I'm excited to say it to your face. I've never been this excited about Big Ten baseball. I really mean that sincerely. And the Rooneys are so excited that we have purchased Big Ten Plus. We've even watched it. Ooh. Like, we didn't just buy a stationary bike and put clothes on it, Joe. Like, we're using the apparatus. So we're in.
It's a much better product this year. So much better. Like last year, it was unwatchable at times. Like depending on which home games you were watching, it was pretty rough. I mean, it was.
Can you confirm, Patrick, the Penn State broadcast has been upgraded? That was the one that always stuck out to me a little bit. It was a weird color in addition to not being particularly like good camera angles.
Yeah. Yeah, they I can't because I haven't seen a Penn State game yet. At least
that'll be the real end. Now we'll be if theirs is better, that'll be the indicator. Yeah. Although I will kind of miss that weird yellow sheen they had on the camera.
Minnesota would have this camera like at US Bank Stadium from the nosebleed seats. And that's an NFL stadium, and that was
the
just
rafters.
What are we watching here? So yeah, that was pretty rough. But they've changed a lot of that. So.
Yes. No, it's good.
Nice job, Bruins.
No, and they're playing 30 games, which is awesome, which makes this race that we're having in the Big Ten would have been really disappointing if we were playing 24 games, which becomes like 22 or 23 games because of weather. The fact that they're playing 30 games, freaking awesome. So Big Ten, good on you. Hey, let's take a quick break. I want to talk about Tecovas boots. If you love our game, you know that smell, the one that brings you right back. Fresh cut grass, a broken-in glove made with real leather. That's exactly what you get with Tecovas boots. They're made for baseball people, whether you've been wearing boots your whole life or you're picking up your first pair. With over 200 steps of craftsmanship, they're built to last, feel great right out of the box, and look even better. As Zebby Barrels always says, anywhere worth going is worth going in good boots. Find your pair today at Tecovas. There you go. It's just a glorious read. It never gets old. Boys, let's go to the SEC. Let's go to the Southeastern Conference. Whereas Jim Schlossnagle would say, it just means more to more people. I like that he takes that saying that offends people and just takes the edge off it. I agree. It just means more to more people. So there's always every series in the SEC is always compelling. Some big ones that I circle were Kentucky at A&M, Mississippi State at LSU, Arkansas at Vandy. I want to comment. Texas is at Mizzou. Do you guys know that the great Augie Garrido, the late Augie Garrido, one of the great, it's a Mount Rushmore coach. Do you know that he lost 4 of his last 5 series in Columbia, Missouri? Like, SEC coaches are so scared to go to Columbia, Missouri. And then you start to fact check it and you're like, you're dang right you should be scared. I mean, Florida last year, Tennessee 2 years ago, and Augie Garrido went 1 for 5 in his last 5 series. A lot of that was the Big 12, obviously.
Listen, I'm not going to let you do that to me. This is my life, Rooney. This is my life.
That is well done. Look at you, Fitzy. Well done. All right, here's my question, boys. Arkansas at Vandy, I thought was one of our most difficult series to pick this week. Now, maybe that's because I'm the high guy on Vandy, but Joe, why don't you kick us off there? Did you find that one a difficult one to pick or no?
Not with the way Arkansas is swinging the bat right now. Like that lineup feels very real. I actually, shameless plug for Highway to Hoover. I talked to Matt Jones from Whole Hog Sports this morning for the show that's going to come out first thing tomorrow morning. And he kind of backed up what I thought, which is that, yeah, this is the real deal. I mean, Kuhio Aloy got on campus and was immediately one of their best guys. Vahiva Aloy's not swinging and missing nearly as much. Looks a little, to my eyes, he looks a little stronger than he has in the past couple of years. Charles Davalon's like a fun, just pure hitter. The list goes on to the point where, they haven't gotten much from Kittle Diggs. They haven't gotten much from Nolan Souza, although he's swinging it better lately. And Ryder Helfrich has just been kind of okay. And if you'd have told me that before the year, I'd have been really worried about where they'd be. And yet it's been as good as their lineup has been in a long, long time. And we can nitpick the pitching stuff. Zach Root had one kind of like disaster start, but otherwise it's been pretty good. But Gabe Gackle has just not been himself. The command hasn't been there. He's walking more guys than you would like. He gets something like 7 wild pitches and 4 hit batters or something like that. I mean, and Matt mentioned that, there is a scenario where they have enough options where they just move back Gackle back into the bullpen, see if that light switch flips on and back in that role. And especially once Gage Wood gets back, I mean, they've just got the pieces to play with. It's not as if the rest of the pitching staff is cratered, right? I mean, yes, Gackle hasn't been as good as anticipated, but the bullpen's been really solid. Lena Beitelschieß has filled in nicely for Gage Wood. Like they're just in really good shape there. And when you talk about their lineup maybe being among the elite, I think they've really got something. So I didn't think too hard about that one, even with it being a road series. I kind of really like how this matches up. Although I will say, I am interested in Sunday's matchup with Connor Fennell on the mound for Vanderbilt. Like, you talk about a funky customer. Like it's kind of a funky delivery, like knees and elbows kind of deal, and it's an 87-mile-an-hour fastball, but it's like all kinds of swing and miss on the secondary pitches. I think he's got 21 strikeouts and 9 2/3 innings so far this season. And they're kind of turning him loose this weekend and like, all right, let's see what happens against this kind of lineup. And I'm kind of fascinated to find out, because I think we know Thompson and Bowker are going to keep them in games, but I do think they maybe have found something here with Fennell, the Dayton transfer.
I'm with you. And McIlvain back in the bullpen, who knows? I mean, he could end up being really good back there. Fitzy, before you answer, I want to encourage you, don't sit on this lead, because Joe claimed he was pitching off, and then we get an expression like funky customer. So again, Fitzy, I'd add on if I was you.
And I had a little bit of a setback there in the second inning. I blew out everybody's audio with my Augie Garrido impression. So I feel like
I thought it was great.
You want to talk about that series, or should I go to different series rooms?
Whatever you want.
I think Auburn and Georgia, to me, it has my attention, because obviously we just spent last week talking about how excited we are about Georgia. They're 25-2. They're scoring a ton of runs. Their pitching still hasn't even really come together. We like the talent, but they seem like they're the real deal. And Auburn is kind of sneakily, gotten off to this 4-2 start in the league. They're 11 in the rankings all of a sudden, which feels a little rich, but we do really like their young talent. And we're going to continue to see those guys tested in SEC play week after week. I mean, when I was down there at Auburn 2 weeks ago, it was, their 3, 4, 5 hitters were all true freshmen. And, those guys are very exciting, Chase Fralick and Chris Rembert, of course, and Bob Terrell, but it's really how are these guys going to hold up over the long haul in SEC play on the road now against the number 3 team in the country? We're going to find out a lot about what Auburn's made of here. And I think that series is super intriguing. It feels like the kind of team that eventually this league is going to catch up with them a little bit, and they're going to have to fight and scrap and claw their way through, but maybe not. I mean, maybe they're just, maybe they're just really good. I don't know. I mean, I'm still trying to decide what I think of Auburn. But I think this is going to be a telling week here.
Yeah, I'm with you, Fitzy. I feel like they should be ranked 11th in next year's poll, not this year's poll. Now, Ike Irish won't be there, and obviously he's back healthy and all that. Ebert, you can go wherever you want with this, but I'm going to give you an over-under to start you off. So there are 3 prominent SEC teams that do not have an SEC weekend win yet, like a series win. And that would be your Florida Gators, your Texas A&M Aggies, and your Mississippi State Bulldogs, Hail State. So I'm going to set the over-under at 1.5. Those 3 teams are 0-6 in winning weekend series in the league so far this year. 1.5 is your over-under. Of those 3 teams, over 1.5 of them is going to win this weekend, their first time, or under 1.5. And just to be clear, Mississippi State's at LSU. They're winning tonight. Florida is at Ole Miss. And who's my other team? A&M is hosting Kentucky. So how many of those 3 downtrodden teams are going to win the weekend? Over 1.5, under 1.5?
Yeah, I'm going to go the bold move here, Cotton, and go with 2. So I'm going to take the over. I think Florida and Texas A&M get it done this weekend. So, I don't really have any basis to think that. I just think eventually, like Florida, you just can't count them out for this long. They're just way too talented. And I don't, I think from watching Texas A&M from afar, and, you guys cover and hit the SEC a lot more than I do, obviously, it seems like Texas A&M has some real problems. And I mentioned my reference in comparison to Nebraska because there seems to be something bigger at play. I think for Florida, it just feels like they just haven't hit that rhythm. And it seemed like they played Tennessee really tough 2 weeks ago and they just went 0-3, and that happens sometimes. Right. So, but I think, with Texas A&M playing Kentucky, I think that's a good matchup for them. I think from a pitching standpoint, they can kind of like bear down and really focus on possibly winning some closer games and not worrying so much that the offense is sputtering more than it should to this point of the season. I just think along the league's too good, and you guys know too. They like the SEC exchanges blows like week after week after week, and you mentioned that Arkansas Vanderbilt series. That series fascinates me simply because of the coaches involved. Dave Van Horn and Tim Corbin, and I mean we're talking obviously 2 of the better programs the past 10 years. We don't see too many years go by where at least one of them isn't at the College World Series. So, and then they have Landon Beetleshees as your Sunday starter for Arkansas. Like I saw this guy pitch for Ohio State last year at the Big Ten tournament. He was the best pitcher I saw all year. And then when I saw he's entering the portal going to Arkansas, my first thought is like, oh, Arkansas's got a new ace. And then when I saw like the fall report came out, it's like he's their Tuesday starter. And I'm like, what? This is Arkansas's Tuesday starter? I'm like, that's just crazy. So, yeah, I find that series especially fascinating. We'll see about some of those teams at 0-6 because when you had this, I pulled up the standings for the SEC because I hadn't done that in a couple of weeks, and I was shocked to see that.
Yeah, it's eye-popping. Joe.
Quick plug that I wrote a story that's on the site today about like the history of the last 10 years. If you start 0-6, like how do you end up? And spoiler alert, no team in the last 10 years has started 0-6 and made a regional. Now,
wow,
that could change. Like Florida's really banged up. Like what if they get healthy, right? Like they're going to be really dangerous. But it just, if nothing else, that just goes to show that like you're really, it's really up against it. And what's interesting too is I looked at the teams that went 1-5, and I didn't write up all of this, but the teams that went 1-5 in the last 10 years, there were 8 of those. So on average, almost 1 per year that started 1-5 and made a regional, including 3 teams that went to Omaha, 2017 A&M, 2015 Arkansas. So it's weird how that's 1 win difference, and yet it's such a stark difference in terms of how the season ends up. Quick thought on Kentucky A&M as well, Runes, like something to watch. Like we know that how that Kentucky offense wants to operate. A&M's not particularly good defensively. Like, does that speed A&M up and just kind of end up being a recipe for like some true disaster innings? We'll see, but I think it is something to watch.
I also wanted to just say real quick, like I think a lot of people, I think Florida's a chic pick this week. I don't think they were in our weekly picks. I don't recall making, but like if they were, I bet a lot of people would have picked the Gators. Yeah. I know a certain friend of ours from Louisville in a certain group text insinuated he thought maybe. the Gators would also win their series this weekend. I think a lot of people are kind of sleeping on Ole Miss. I just think that these guys are. There's a reason they're a top 15 team in the country. Like they've been pretty good, and I don't know, man. I just think Ole Miss has not yet earned the respect nationally that they're going to earn over the course of the season. I like them at home. I don't think this is like a get right weekend for Florida. I really don't.
They're going to have to pitch better. Like I think Missouri's lineup is better this year than it has been, but still, like especially on the last 2 games that series, Ole Miss had to work pretty hard to keep Missouri at bay there.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you'd go under, Fitzy. I would go over, but you're right. I'm going over because of brand names, like not because like it's just a pure gut feel play.
Yeah, I'm going under.
Joe, did you give us a selection?
No, I did not. I was hoping to maybe, glide past it. I'll go with Patrick. Give me the over. I like Florida. And I guess as I sit here and watch Mississippi State lead, I guess I would still like LSU, but I do think with A&M, like, I think we might just be, I keep hearing all the time, well, they're going to get Caden Sorrell back at some point. And it's like, okay, like he's a nice player. Like, I don't mean that to be disrespectful to Caden Sorrell. He's a very nice player, but like what's happening there is beyond just getting like one guy back. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, unless Gavin Grahovac magically also comes back, which we know isn't going to obviously happen. Like, it just seems like a lot to put on like one player and, we'll get him back. We'll see. But like, I'm more worried there than I am in the other 2 cases.
Yep. It is possible. And then we'll move to the ACC. It is possible that A&M is just a very famous roster that has not become a great team. And again, like Sorrell hasn't played. I get that. Josh Stewart's been out in the bullpen. I get that. Grahovic, it's the reigning SEC freshman of the year. That's a big loss. But still, like, those weren't the only reasons that they were unanimous number 1. It was just a very famous roster. Part of that's the transfers. Part of that is you played for the national title.
Quickly, I realized I said over and talking about, I guess I mean under, because I would take Kentucky to win that series, and I would take LSU. So I guess I'm going under. I thought I was going to go over, but I guess I'm going under.
Mathing is hard. There's three choices. I'm
glad I have that straight.
Yes, that's right.
Maybe if I just confuse the listeners enough, nobody can hold my feet to the fire on anything, I just need to make my predictions as opaque as possible so that nobody can really pin me down.
Oh my gosh. What's that line from that one movie? 7 different kinds of smoke. That's what Joe's throwing at us right now. Just trying to get us off the trail.
Not familiar with that phrase, but I like it.
Me, you, and McGee. Anybody? Owen Wilson. Oh, somebody in the comments, please help us. Oh,
you, me, and Dupree.
You, me, and Dupree. Thank you. What did I say? Me, you, and Dupree. Oh my gosh. Say that again, Joe. I need to write that down.
You, me, and Dupree.
Oh, that's a good movie.
As opposed to you, me, and McGee, or me and
me and Ryan McGee. And
I was about to say, like, let's
should be a movie.
In the Rome room, last year after Tennessee,
Oh my gosh, that was epic. Yes. No sleep in Omaha. Boys, let's go to the Atlantic Coast Conference. So I think Cal at Louisville is of interest. NC State at Duke is of interest to me because NC State lost 5 in a row around week 2, and I just I had my shovel out, and I made a public apology to them last night during my game. They have been awesome since losing 5 in a row. So NC State at Duke's a big series. Stanford at Virginia, which is on right now, our good friends KP and Coach Farron are doing the game. That is a huge series. And then, I would argue the biggest series of the weekend is Clemson at Georgia Tech. And this gives us a chance to talk about Danny Hall retiring. I mean, just one of the great humans in our game who's had a great run at Georgia Tech, incredible length of tenure. And Danny Hall takes over at Georgia Tech in 94, and they play for the national title. He takes over a team with Jay Payton, Jason Varitek, and Nomar Garcia-Pera. So just what a cool career from moment 1 till this being his final season. And they have an awesome team. Like I feel comfortable saying this is the best Georgia Tech team in 10 years. But go Fitzy, you're more of the ACC. That's your home turf as much for anybody. Am I being too aggressive there saying it's the best Tech team in 10 years?
Yeah, I don't know yet. For me, I just don't know yet. Yeah, exactly. Like it's when you look at, who they've played. I mean, sweeping Notre Dame this past weekend, Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech, like, okay, but like none of those were teams we projected to make a regional heading into the year. Right. And so like they're 20-4. I mean, I did like Virginia Tech. It was one of my sleepers heading of the year. So that's a nice road series win. I'm not going to minimize it, but yeah, I mean, they haven't really played the meat of their schedule yet. And so I like what I'm reading about their roster. Our guy, Bradley Smart, has been all over this. He's covered them very well. And then I like what I'm reading about this roster, but they've had some very talented teams over the last 10 years. I mean, they've hosted regionals and they've been in regional finals and like haven't been able to get over the hump. I get it, but like they've had
number three national seed in 2019.
Great call, Joe. I mean, that was a pretty good team. Runes, I don't think this team is probably better than number 3 national team. I'm going to take the under on that.
Yes, I would say. I that's interesting. So I remember their lefty on that team, Connor Thomas. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
But I don't remember a Drew Burris on that team. Maybe Parada. Was Parada on that team?
No, that would have been
Joey Bart, maybe.
Is it Tristan English on that team?
Who could say?
Interesting. Who could say, right?
Circle back. I'm going to look it up. We're going to go line by line on their stat sheet from 2019.
I like it. But that's huge. Obviously, that's a great point, though. Like, I'm glad you brought that up because that, like, number 3 national seed, that's no joke. Now, there's no way they won the ACC that year. No way.
They had a 19-11 record that year. Offense was led by, I remember this guy, like Michael Goldberg, who I think was a
machine, like a DH.
Full-time DH, yeah. Tristan English was on that team. Luke Waddell.
Luke Waddell, great
the
player.
Wilhite brothers.
That's right.
Kyle McCann was a catcher. He had 23 home runs that year. Kyle McCann. Baron Radcliffe, one of my favorite players from days gone by, was on that team. Brant Herter was in the rotation with Connor Thomas. Xavier Curry was there. Current big leaguer, Xavier Curry.
Stephen Williams broke their heart in that regional.
Yeah.
Auburn.
Right. That's right.
Best reliever was Tristan English, and then Jonathan Hughes.
But a fair take, Fitzy. So you're pumping the brakes just a tiny bit. Like you're not saying that's not who Georgia Tech is, but little too early. But obviously we're gonna find out. We're gonna learn a lot this weekend.
They have my attention, and actually, I think I picked them to win the series this weekend against Clemson. Like I do think they're good. I just think like let's not get carried away. Let's wait to see a little bit here. But I mean, you're right. I mean, Burris is a big time star. I mean, he's one of the very best players in the country, for the second year in a row. And it seems like their pitching is dramatically improved. And that's something that, again, I'll give Bradley credit for. He's written a lot about how much their pitching philosophy has changed over the last 2 years. And maybe last year they still kind of took some lumps, but at least they were in the zone more, and now we're starting to see their approach bear fruit. And so I certainly am high on this team. I just am I ready to say that they're a regional host? I don't know yet. We'll see. I mean, they could be. I really believe they could be, but I don't know yet.
Yep. And Dennis 133, I see in the chat. Yeah, Mason Patel. How about this? His first 8 appearances, he got 8 decisions. He had 7 wins and a save.
No.
So
the vulture.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, it's also like he's utterly dominating. It's like a 119 opponent's batting average, 28-4 strikeout to walk. Like he's doing it all. It's not just vulturing wins like John Wasden would do.
Yep. That's well played. And Coach Farron and I talked to Danny Hall, and he just said it's kind of what you said, Fitz. He said Matt Taylor, the new pitching coach, is like you could tell Coach Hall has empowered him, and it's modern, and it's basically what Coach Hall was saying is it's affected everything about their pitching, the recruits they're getting in pitching, the transfers they're getting in pitching, and the effectiveness of the pitchers once they get them on campus.
Yep.
I'll piggyback on there because I have a couple Georgia Tech thoughts. Like one is first on Danny Hall. I am someone who's very careful to not go out of my way. Sometimes you hear folks, and I'm not necessarily talking about anybody here, but sometimes you hear people kind of flippantly just throw out like, oh, it's about certain coaches being a good person or a good man, or he's a great coach, but he's a better person. When the reality is, Runes, you have some different relationships having come from the coaching world. So that's a little different. But for most of us, we don't really know these people. Mm-hmm. Like we see their public personas. We maybe have a nice side conversation from time to time, but never never anything that feels beyond surface level, because ultimately there's always that dynamic of it's a coach and a media member. So there's always that kind of guardedness, right? And I get that. I don't hold that against him. So anyway, I just try to be very careful about saying stuff like that. Danny Hall is one of my exceptions. Just based on what I hear about from everyone else in the coaching profession and out of it, the way he treats people. I never hear a bad thing about that. He's always been wonderful to me, but that's beside the point, really. Like, that's fine. Like, whether he's nice to me or not. But so he's someone I do feel confident saying, like, just a good, solid, kind human being in an industry that doesn't always reward good, solid, kind human beings on a day-to-day basis. So, heck of a career. I understand why some Georgia Tech fans are a little frustrated. I get that. You've been on the doorstep a million times. I think they've have been eliminated in like 10 straight regional finals or something ridiculous. That's just off the top of my head. But like, they're always in a regional final and can never get over the hump. And they've lost some home regionals, and I get it. But man, there's a lot of programs out there that would kill to have the consistency of Georgia Tech baseball. And, you could sit here and say, oh, they have some advantages. They're in Atlanta. I get it, but they also have some disadvantages, right? Like, that's not necessarily the easiest place to play just because it sits in Midtown Atlanta. So anyway, that's my piece on Georgia Tech. And also, I get that they haven't maybe played the best schedule, but one of the things about previous Georgia Tech teams that we've gotten like a little bit excited about is like, they would just drop games. You're like, what are we doing? Like, how did they lose this game? And they haven't done that as much this year. So I think that is a positive indicator, even if that is damning with faint praise. So that's my piece on Georgia Tech. I'll hand the mic off, Runes, to someone else after my soliloquy there.
That was good. Hey, so Ebert, I'm going to tee you up on something in a second. Now, Justin, I see you in the chat, and Justin put very sarcastically, and of course it's just a sentence that he typed, but I'm interpreting it as very sarcastic, which I enjoy. That's very much in the spirit of the chat. He writes, OU at Bama must not be intriguing, which it is. Of course, it's intriguing. Like I said, every series in the SEC is compelling. There's really no such thing as a non-compelling SEC series. I will say, though, that, OU has not, they're 2-0 in weekend series, and Bama has been excellent. They swept A&M on the road, and they played Tennessee really tough. Now, that series got more interesting because I think, Joe, correct me if I say this incorrectly, but I think we've heard that Riley Quick will not pitch in this series. And, I don't know, Bama and Oklahoma it's a fun series because they're very different. OU is very inside game and track meet, and, Alabama is very physical and old and also has the best player in the country in Justin LeBron. So no Riley Quick does put a damper on Bama's chances, but I do think that's compelling. Obviously, the real reason, Justin, we didn't cover it is because now, of course, we just did. But the real reason is because we'd already spent 29 of the 29 and a half minutes we've talked on the SEC. So I was trying to move us on to something different. So full
confirmed. Riley Quick not in the rotation, but listed as questionable. So that might be hey, let's see how he feels come Saturday or Sunday or what have you.
Yes.
Dealt with a blood blister last week. So.
Got it. Yeah, and then Rob Vaughn will be watching from the stands for at least one of those games because of I think he is suspended for at least one game. So, Ebert, I'm going to ask you about Conference USA. Let me just rattle off a few more series of interest this weekend. In the Big 12, Baylor's playing at Arizona. Arizona's excellent. They're without Brendan Summerhill for a couple weeks. Oklahoma State's at KU. Oklahoma State really needs to get going. I think they are 1-3 or 1-4 in the Big 12 so far. FAU's at UTSA. That's a big American series. UConn's at Xavier. It's a big Big East series. Cal Poly at UC Davis. It's a little bit of a renaissance in the Big West, in my opinion. I'm just all in on the Big West this year. Lafayette at Lehigh is just a bitter rivalry. Roll damn Pards. Who took the Engine Nerds for us? Who took the Mountain Hawks? Joe?
That would be me. Yes, of course.
Do we know what this rivalry is called? I just know that they
Lehigh
talk smack.
Lafayette. I'll look it up. Keep going.
Google it. So, Ebert, I asked you, give us a non-P4 conference that you want to talk about. You brought up Conference USA. I love that suggestion. Very compelling league this year. Tell me, give me your top of line thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, I think first, non-P4, your mind immediately goes to Sun Belt, and justifiably so. With Troy and Southern Miss and Coastal Carolina. I mean, those three teams look like the real deal, and I'm sure we'll see Coastal Carolina battle their way back into the top 25 at some point this season. But yeah, Conference USA, like this one team, and Aaron knows this because I've been bugging him and Kendall for a few weeks now about getting down to Dallas to see Western Kentucky play DBU next weekend, just because I personally find that fascinating. I think it's going to be an absolutely fantastic series. And you look at what Western Kentucky has done each of the past 2 years under Mark Rardin, who took Iowa Western and made them into an absolute junior college powerhouse. And, he comes over and takes over for Western Kentucky, and you think, how many years is it going to take him to kind of turn this thing around? And, he does it in year one. He goes and grabs some of his old players and some other guys. And the whole league now, you look, Dallas Baptist is 16-8, Florida International 17-9, Louisiana Tech 15-10, New Mexico State 14-11, so on and so forth. Their standings, all these teams feel like they're going to be 20-game winners here in the next couple of weeks. And I'm not just talking like the top 2 or 3. I'm talking about like the top 5, 6, or 7. And when you see that, like this league is just going to spend a lot of time beating up on each other. And, you're going to get to the end, and how many teams ultimately make the NCAA tournament, that's obviously remains to be seen. But, I think this is far from a one big league. I don't think it has that label. And, anywhere Dallas Baptist goes, you gotta factor in like, okay, pretty good chance they're going to be that automatic bid, not guaranteed, obviously not slam dunk, but whether they get the auto bid or an at-large berth, you have to believe they're going to be in that postseason mix. But now Western Kentucky is looking like they could be in that mix. Liberty is enjoying a really good season under first-year coach Bradley LaCroix, who came over from VCU. So it's a league that's had my attention now the past few weeks. I'm really glad that David Seifert kind of did a prospect breakdown of that league here this past week in his scouting trail feature, because it's certainly warranted, and I think it's deserving of everyone's attention.
I would like to hear from the voice of the Liberty Flames, Mr. Joseph W. Healy.
Love it.
Do you have anything to offer us about the Flames right now?
Yeah, they're I've done for those who don't know, I'm doing a little bit of ESPN Plus broadcasting this year, just kind of here and there, and I happen to do a handful of Liberty games to this point, so like I feel like I'm pretty well versed, and I'm just going to say they're 3-0 when I've been in the booth, 4-0 when I've been in the booth. I shorted myself.
How about that?
Coincidence, probably, but every little bit helps. I think, first of all, they're going to have a polarizing postseason resume by the end of the year, because I don't think they're quite good enough to be like right up there with DBU and kind of maybe start to distance themselves from the rank and file of CUSA. But with their midweek wins, they're laying waste to the ACC in the midweek, essentially. They lost 2 against Clemson, but they've beaten NC State, Duke, Wake, and Virginia in the midweeks. And so I think that they seem destined to be a team where we have to look at them and go, okay, well, their RPI is good, but they finished 4th in CUSA. Like, what do we do with that? Now, that being said, I think you have to give Coach LaCroix a lot of credit, because that was a total like rebuild on the fly kind of deal, because Scott Jackson leaves to go be an assistant at UNC. Kane Kepley, their arguably best offensive player, follows him there. They lose a bunch of players, and he basically did what he did last year at VCU. VCU is a regional team last year, and he had to rebuild that roster. And it's not just like spare part guys. Like, it struck me after my first couple of games there that like they've got some prospects, like Ben Blair on the mound, Dylan Matheson on the mound, Joe Webb on the mound. They got a freshman in Landon Seeley, who I think's a prospect a couple of years from now, a guy who plays center field and shortstop, and he's playing third base now. So it's not just like, hey, here's a bunch of, I don't want to be disrespectful, but a bunch of like, just JC guys we picked up from random here. Like, no, these are real guys. They're talented. And so I didn't necessarily expect that to be the case. Thought it'd be a good team, but they've actually got more talent than I give them credit for. So I think they're going to be in the mix. Unfortunately, we have to wait till the last weekend of the regular season to get Liberty and DBU in Lynchburg. I think it's going to be a fun series. And maybe there'll be some real stakes. I sure hope so.
Fitzy, if I gave you, you could have DBU or the field to win the CUSA regular season championship. And I will force myself to make this selection too. Would you take the field or DBU?
I would take DBU, even though I agree with Patrick, that I do think the field is capable. Looks improved. I mean, Liberty is 1-2 right now after one weekend, but I think they're a team that is a contender in that league for all the reasons Joe mentioned. I know Joe was saying maybe he thinks he wonders if they have staying power in the race, but like I like their talent and the arms that you mentioned, and Jackson Storage is a guy we like. La Tech, it felt like that was a team that we thought would be a transition year for them, maybe. But they're fighting. I mean, they're 15-10. They're not like dominating everybody, but like it's a well-coached program. They're always kind of hanging around. Did not expect FIU to be up near the top of the standings. We'll see if that has staying power, but ultimately it's DBU, guys. They just have so much more talent than everybody. I think ultimately their pro talent is just at a different level. And obviously they're so well coached, their track record and everything else. Like I would be surprised if it's not DBU.
Yeah, it is cool. Like 8 of the 10 teams with over 500 records, and that league like is really to put a bow on all of this. It's really popped up. That's really interesting and really cool. And I think as we talk about, I would pick DBU too. And as we think about DBU and the new house settlement, all this stuff, like this could, I keep reading these articles recently about, hey, will basketball schools that don't have football have a huge advantage in revenue sharing because they won't have a football team that will be sucking up 18 million of the 20 million, right? Well, what about a school that only has one Division I sport like DBU, right? Like, I mean, DBU, I haven't seen anything formally announced, but I anticipate them going way all in on baseball, right? Like you tell us we can have 34 scholarships, we're going 30. And so to your point, Fitzy, what is already an extremely talented roster that's got a great identity as a program. They're just, again, that's a conversation probably for the off season, but man, that house settlement will be here before we know it. By the way, I'm embracing the sarcasm today. So Brett J in the comments, which we love having everybody here, and Expo SS, we see you in there. Knoxville native, we appreciate all that. He says, Brett J says, is Alex Lodis still the 26th best shortstop in the country? And, obviously Alex Lodis, who's hit for the cycle, hit a walk-off grand slam for Florida State to beat the Gators. I mean, that's going to be Chuck Walsh of FSU texted me and said, I know this is grandiose, but this could end up being one of the great moments in Florida State athletics history. Like the dude hit a walk-off grand slam to beat their arch rival, and he hit for the cycle that night. Like that's bonkers. I know it happened on a Tuesday, but in fairness to us, if this is in fact sarcastic, Alex Lodis was a good player last year, but he hit 280 and the OPS was 833. Like his OPS is
with
up
64 strikeouts and 19 walks. Like it was exactly like, frankly, I think where we had him ranked in the preseason was about right. I believe that
predictive.
Maybe it was on the generous side. I mean, based on like his track record, he was a good player, but also
stay tuned though.
Brett, this is week 6. After week 6, we update our player rankings. We've already updated our shortstops list.
Is it up? Is it posted?
Brett, check it out. D1Baseball.com. The latest top 50 shortstops list. Alex Lodis, number 3.
Yes.
Which
Trace.
And then it's just a very, look, he's a really good player. Our guy David Seifert was kind of raving about him recently after he sat on Florida State for a few games and wrote him up on the scouting trail. And he said, this guy is really taking a step forward. And he was already a good player. Now he's a great player. So hat tip to him. But listen, we did our jobs. All right. Like we had him ranked in the appropriate spot and he got better. Good for him.
That's right. And on a serious note, any like a hitter in Link Jarrett's system for a second year, man, count me in on that. Like Cam Smith was fine as a freshman. I mean, he had 1 million strikeouts, and it was kind of like your typical freshman year, like all over the joint, right? And then last year he's a top 15 pick, and now he had his first big league hit today. And so anyway, Alex Lodis, the whole Florida State team, I think, is just absolutely loaded. By the way, if you don't have a subscription to D1 Baseball, so you can go look at those player rankings, Kendall is giving away the farm right now. He's been a little under the weather lately, and I think it's gotten to him because the new coupon is Omaha 30 for 30% off. Joe, I heard you say this the other day. There will not be a greater coupon in the year 2025 for D1Baseball.com. Omaha 30. If you do SEC Extra, you get ACC Extra for free. If you do ACC Extra, you get SEC Extra for free. So never been a better time. You can see Patrick's weekly picks in there. If you care to make a wager, I would say go with Patrick's picks more so than others on this show tonight.
What are you implying?
I'm implying that maybe next week one of the key articles will be the fantastic Fitt Dogs hashtag hot board season.
Yep. Quickly, Runes, to circle back, Lehigh Lafayette is called the Rivalry. That's all it's called, is the Rivalry.
That's
That
all
is
you need to know. It's the only rivalry.
The longest uninterrupted college football rivalry in the United States. 160 meetings between the two.
Eat it, Harvard, Yale. Eat it.
Yeah, that's right. Stand down, Harvard, Yale. Piebert, it was great to have you. Continued success. I would love to see you finish second in the weekly picks race this year as the fabulous Rune Dogs, make our traditional second half sprint for the finish line. He gave me for you only listening on the podcast, Patrick just gave a great Dikembe Mutombo right there. Fitzy, I want to say congratulations to you for winning the turn of phrase of the game. It was really a volume play. You had things like Redemption Arc. You had an Augie Garrido impersonation. You sang Piano Man from Billy Joel for us before we hit record. You used the phrase mathing. I just thought you were the ball was coming out of your hand great tonight.
Well, thanks. I was just about to say anyone but the Rune Dogs is what I'm rooting for in the picks. Anyone but the Rune Dogs. But I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit more because now you said these nice things about me, Coach, and I feel bad.
Oh, I like it. So good. Gentlemen, good to see you. Hey, everybody enjoy week 7. Hard to believe. We are almost halfway. We're almost to the halfway point of the college baseball regular season, which is absolutely bonkers, all caps. But that is it. Everyone enjoy the weekend, and we will catch you next time on the D1 Baseball Podcast.